letter C, when Bastiat brings us into the personal, into the ethical, he talks about how, often the sweeter the first fruit of a habit, the more bitter are the other fruits. He uses 3 examples here. One is debauchery, and debauchery means, I'm just going to keep it simple here, having sex outside of marriage is what he's understanding by that term here. And there's no doubt that that feels extremely good to do, but there are frequently negative consequences to that. It could take the form of unwanted pregnancies. It could take the form of sexually transmitted diseases. It could be just something like depression or anxiety by engaging in these relationships that are by definition temporary. And so it really fits this example of this form of something that feels good in the short term, but that usually has very seriously bad consequences. The next example is laziness, which feels good to just kind of kick back on a couch and watch TV or do whatever, take a nap, but ultimately it leads to poverty and even death if you don't do any work. And so it's hard to work, it's painful to work, it's difficult to work, but it brings about having enough, all the food, shelter, and clothing that you need as a rule. Prodigality means spending more money than you have, and that again feels good while you're going on the shopping spree, but when the bill comes, then it's painful. And think about the housing crash we just experienced, where people were buying houses they couldn't afford. That not only brought bitter fruit and disaster for themselves, but also for the rest of us who are suffering from the collapse of the housing market and all the financial instruments that were based on those bad mortgages. So, the point here that Bastiat is making is it's just better to train ourselves to be disciplined enough to make choices that are difficult but have good outcomes. And I bring this into this section of the book because this is what it means to be personally responsible. And so you need lots of people in our society to be living like this in order to be free. If lots of people are living like this, then they're going to, when they make their choices and then experience their bad outcomes, whether it's poverty or illness or whatever it is, then you need government to come in and rescue them. And that leads to a loss of liberty in the sense of having a lot of help from government in a small area of personal responsibility. And by the way, I'll just point out, there's the folks who are living this way who, through the extra taxes they have to pay, are going to be supporting the people who are living this way. And it's not clear to me how sustainable an arrangement that is. Letter D is Blackstone, just to show you that this way of looking at things is the traditional way, well established in the liberal tradition of the West. Blackstone says here that this is the way reality works, and it works this way because that's the way God established things. And he says that God is so good that he contrived the constitution and frame of humanity that we should want no other prompter to pursue the rule of right, but only our own self-love. Now again, I have no idea why when human beings have promiscuous sex, they get diseases, but that is the way things work. He thinks it's because God made it that way, and so there's only one real bottom line motivation we have and need to do what's right, which is our own self-love. In other words, we want to be experiencing the joys and happiness of life, not self-destructing and bringing the miseries of life upon ourselves by our choices. And so there's this encouragement, enticement to do what's right. And he says that God has intimately connected, inseparably interwoven the laws of eternal justice with happiness. And so there's no way to experience happiness going down this path. That the only way to experience happiness is by going down the path of doing what's right and responsible. And so that happiness cannot be attained but by observing the laws of justice. And if the former is punctually obeyed, if you do what's right, it will bring about happiness. So let's just add this here: happiness, misery. I think it's a good assumption that human beings have this in common, that we want to be happy and we don't want to be miserable. So there's only one rule, he's saying, which is we should pursue our own happiness, which means to do things, do actions, make choices that lead to our own happiness. And this is the foundation of ethics and natural law. So just to be aware that these are sometimes called natural law consequences, because actions that are considered right have these consequences, and actions that are considered wrong have these consequences. And that's really the point of morality, to keep, as traditionally understood, was to keep people from self-destructing and rather to act in ways that bring about happiness.